"Sir, my mum won't wake up," said the little girl. The Count turned pale and ordered, "Take me to her." Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The fair in Bath always sounded noisier than it was, at least to Edward Harrington's ears. Voices rose and fell in a jumble, hawkers calling out their wares, children laughing, women bargaining, men boasting of horses and crops. Wheels rattled over the cobbles, a fiddler sawed away at a tune near the fountain, and somewhere a dog barked until someone shushed it. Edward moved through it with the faint, polite smile he wore for most public duties. He had come to inspect a new breed of sheep at the insistence of a neighbour, but the air felt heavy and the crowd too close. His steward walked a few steps behind. The coach waited at the edge of the square. It was all as it always was, until he heard a small, hoarse voice say, "Please help me. Please, sir." At first he did not see her. People parted and closed again like water around a stone. The voice came again, higher this time, pressed thin with anxiety. "Please, my mum will not wake up. Please." Edward stopped. He turned toward the sound and saw her. She was very small, no more than 4, thin as a reed, her hair a tangle of curls escaping from a crooked ribbon. Dust clung to the hem of her faded frock. One hand gripped a torn cloth doll by its arm. The other reached up, tugging at sleeves as people passed. Most never looked down. A few frowned, murmured, "Run along now," and stepped aside. The child's eyes were wet and wide and shining with panic. Edward frowned and stepped closer. "Little one," he said, bending so that his face was nearly level with hers. "What is the matter?" She flinched, then stared at him. Her gaze slid briefly to his coat, his cravat, the fine stitching of his gloves as if measuring the risk. Then her lip trembled and the words burst out. "Sir, my mom won't wake up." The sentence hit him harder than any shouted warning. He held her gaze. "What do you mean she won't wake? Is she sleeping?" "She is always sleeping," the girl said. 2 days. I shake her and call her, and she does not wake. She is very hot. I am hungry." She swallowed, eyes filling again. "People said I should find someone, so I am finding you." Someone in the crowd laughed uneasily. "Children say the wildest things," a woman muttered as she passed. Edward ignored her. His voice stayed calm, but something in his chest tightened. "What is your name?" "Amelia," she whispered. "Amelia." "My name is Edward," he said. He almost added his title, but stopped himself. She would not care. "Where is your home? Where is your mother?" "In a house," she said. "It is dark. She lies on the bed. She will not wake. How long since she last ate? And you?" Amelia stared down at her shoes. "We had bread. Then we had nothing. I gave her the last piece. There is water, but it tastes bad. I took some from the bucket in the street. I am sorry." "Do not be sorry," he said at once. "Have you no one else?" "No father, no neighbour." She shook her head with surprising firmness. "There was Mrs. Dobbs, but she went away. Mamma said we would be well. But we are not well." Her small body gave a shiver. Edward saw then what others had missed, the way her shoulders sagged with exhaustion, the purple smudges beneath her eyes, the rawness at the corner of her mouth where she had bitten it. "Why did you come to the fair, Amelia?" he asked gently. "Mamma came once," she said. "There was bread here." And she smiled. "So I thought if I came here, I could find bread, or someone who knew how to wake mammas." For a moment he could not trust himself to speak. His steward cleared his throat behind him. "My lord, shall I—" "Hold your tongue, Mercer," Edward said, more sharply than he intended. He softened it with a glance. "Amelia, can you show me where you live?" She looked frightened at that. "You will not be angry?" "Why should I be angry?" "Because it is not a pretty house," she said. "It smells. And Mamma says gentlefolk do not go there. She says they forget people like us." She said it kindly, she added quickly, as if defending her mother. Edward's jaw tightened. "I will not be angry," he said. "I only wish to see your mother and help her. Will you take me to her?" She considered him, eyes intent. Then she gave a quick, solemn nod and slipped her small hand into his. Her fingers were cold. They left the square together, Edward walking, Amelia tugging gently, glancing back to be sure he followed. Mercer hovered behind, unease written in every line of his posture. "My lord, is this entirely prudent?" Mercer began in a low voice as they turned into a narrower street. "Such matters are usually left to—" "Mercer," Edward said quietly, "you will return to the coach. Send James to fetch a physician at once. Ask for Dr. Wells. Bring him to the child's home as soon as possible. Take my name if you must. Tell him it is an urgent matter." Mercer hesitated only a moment, then bowed quickly. "Yes, my lord." He hurried back the way they had come. Edward and Amelia walked on alone. The streets changed as they moved away from the square. The houses grew smaller, closer together, their fronts plain and in need of paint. The sounds of the fair dulled behind them. A boy rolled a hoop in the gutter. A woman shook a rug from a window. A man with a pail hurried past, nodding briefly to Edward before looking away. Amelia held his hand with determination, her little strides quick and serious. Once he asked, "Are you tired?" And she answered, "I am used to walking," though her breath came a bit faster. "Do you often go about alone?" he asked. "Only sometimes," she said. "Mamma did not like it. She said I was too small, but small people can still walk." "Indeed they can," he said. "Are you a doctor?" she asked suddenly. "No." "Are you a magistrate?" He almost laughed. "No." She frowned, puzzled. "You look like someone important." "I'm simply a man who was standing in the wrong place at the right time," he said. "Do you trust me, Amelia?" She thought about it. "You spoke to me," she answered at last. "Others did not. I will trust you for a little while." "A little while will do," he murmured. They turned down an alley so narrow that Edward had to angle his shoulders slightly. Dampness clung to the stones. A stray cat darted away as they approached. Near the end of the passage, Amelia stopped before a low wooden door, its paint peeling. "This is us," she said quietly. He could smell the faint sourness of stale air and something else. Neglect, perhaps, or simply too many closed windows and not enough light. "Does anyone else live in this house?" he asked. "No," she said. "There used to be a man below, but he left. It is only us now." She pushed at the door. It stuck. She put both hands against it, straining. Edward reached over her and lifted the latch. The door gave way with a dry creak. Inside it was dim. A single small window let in a wedge of late afternoon light, fallen across a wooden table and two chairs. On the table lay an overturned cup and a crust of bread so dry it seemed turned to stone. A bucket stood in the corner, half full of cloudy water. The air was close, with the faint smell of sickness. Amelia did not pause. She walked straight to the back of the little room, where a narrow bed stood against the wall. "Mamma," she said, climbing up beside the figure lying there. "Mamma, I have brought someone. He knows how to help." The woman on the bed did not move. Edward stepped forward, his eyes adjusting to the dimness. He had expected. He was not sure what he had expected. A woman of indeterminate age, perhaps, worn by hardship, lines etched deep. The face on the pillow was pale, yes, and hollowed by exhaustion, but it was young. Younger than he had imagined. The lines he saw were not of age, but of strain. Dark hair lay loose around her shoulders, tangled but soft. Her lips were dry, parted slightly. He could see the faint flutter of her breath. For a moment he forgot to breathe himself. "See?" Amelia said anxiously. "She is still sleeping. She is very hot. I put a cloth, but it went dry." A rag lay crumpled near the woman's shoulder, stiff with use. Edward moved closer. "Amelia, I'm going to touch your mother's hand," he said. "Will that be all right?" "Yes," she whispered, "please." He took the woman's wrist gently between his fingers. Her skin burned. Her pulse fluttered fast and weak beneath his touch. He frowned. "Has she spoken at all?" he asked. "In these 2 days. Sometimes she says my name," Amelia said. "Sometimes she says other things. I do not understand. Then she is quiet again." "Has she eaten anything?" "I tried to make her eat," Amelia said, her voice breaking, "but she could not chew. I put water at her lips. Some went in. I do not know how much. I'm sorry, Mamma. I'm sorry." She pressed her little face against the woman's arm. Edward's throat tightened as he looked around the room. There was a small hearth with cold ashes, a shelf with 2 plates and a cracked cup, a trunk with a folded shawl atop it. No firewood, no medicine, no sign that anyone had stepped in to help. The woman's other hand lay palm up on the blanket. It was not the hand of a lifelong peasant. The fingers were slender, the nails short but neatly shaped. There was a small, faint callus where a pen might have rested. Around her throat, beneath the edge of her worn bodice, a glint of metal caught the light. Edward reached carefully and drew out a simple locket on a chain. It was tarnished at the edges but finely made, the sort of piece a lady might wear daily. He let it fall back against the fabric. "Is she going to die?" Amelia asked in a small voice. He looked at the child. Her eyes were enormous in her thin face. "She is very ill," he said honestly, "but I will do everything that can be done to prevent that. A physician is on his way. We must keep her as cool as we can and give her water when she can swallow it." Amelia nodded as if she had been given orders. "I can do that," she said. "I have been doing that. I will do it more." "You have done very well," he said softly. She blinked quickly at the praise. He found a basin, fetched water from the bucket, and dipped the rag, wringing it out. The water was not as clean as he would have liked, but there was no choice. He folded the cloth and laid it on the woman's forehead, feeling the heat rising from her skin. She made a faint sound, a breath drawn a little sharper. "Do you know your mother's name?" he asked as he worked. "Clara," Amelia said. "Her name is Clara." "Does she have another name?" he asked gently. "A family name?" Amelia frowned. "Sometimes she calls herself Mrs. Something," she said. "She says it is easier, but when she is tired she says only Clara." He nodded. The name suited the face before him in a way he could not explain. "Amelia, I must step outside for a moment," he said. "Only to the doorway to see if the physician is coming. Will you stay by your mother and speak to her? Tell her that help is here." "Yes," the child said. "She likes when I talk. She says my voice keeps the bad dreams away." He rose and crossed the room in a few strides. At the door he paused and looked back. Clara, he could not help thinking of her as Clara now, lay motionless except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest. Amelia sat upright by her side, her small hand resting on her mother's arm, her doll tucked under her elbow as if it too were on watch. The sight struck him with sudden force. This was not a scene from a pamphlet, not a case discussed in a drawing room. It was a pair of lives balanced on the edge of something he did not yet understand. Outside, the alley felt narrower than before. He scanned the way they had come, listening for the sound of carriage wheels, the brisk step of a man called to his duty. Nothing yet. He clenched his jaw. Dr. Wells was reliable, but every minute felt stolen. He turned back into the house. As he stepped over the threshold, Clara stirred. It was a small movement, just the faintest shift of her head toward the sound of his boots. Her brows drew together, as if a pain ran through her even in sleep. Her lips moved without sound. "Mama?" Amelia breathed. Edward crossed the room in 3 quick steps and came to the bedside again. Clara's eyes remained closed, but her mouth opened as if she were fighting her way upward through water. "Clara," he said quietly, "can you hear me?" For a moment he thought she would not answer. Then her lashes fluttered, and a thin line of hazel appeared. The eyes were unfocused, dulled by fever, yet even so he saw a flicker of awareness. She studied his face without truly seeing it. "Amelia," she whispered, barely a breath. "I am here, Mama," the child said. "I brought a gentleman. He is going to help." Clara's gaze shifted between them with a slow, dragging motion. Her hand moved weakly, as if seeking Amelia's fingers. Edward guided the child's hand into her mother's. "You are ill," he said, keeping his voice calm, "but you are not alone. A physician is coming. You must rest." Her lips shaped a word. He leaned closer. "Do not speak if it pains you," he said. "We can talk later." Her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around Amelia's. A flicker of distress crossed her face. The room seemed to shrink. Even the faint sounds from the street fell away. When she spoke again, the words came slowly, each one dragged through dryness and fear. But they were unmistakable. "Do not take me back to them, please." For a moment, Edward thought he had misheard. "Back to whom?" he asked quietly. Clara's brow furrowed. Fever clouded her gaze. She seemed to be fighting something inside her own head. "Them," she whispered. "No more, I cannot. I will not." Her voice failed. Her eyes slid shut, as if the effort had cost her. Edward forced his tone to stay steady. "You are safe here," he said. "No one will move you without your consent. Do you understand?" She did not answer, but her hand, still holding Amelia's, loosened slightly. Amelia looked up at him, anxious. "Who is them?" the child asked in a hushed voice. "I do not know yet," he said, "but we need not trouble your mother with questions until she is stronger. For now, we must cool her and wait for the physician." As if summoned by the word, a sound came from the alley. Wheels grinding against stone, a man's quick footsteps. A moment later, a firm knock struck the door. Edward opened it to find Mercer, breathless, and behind him Dr. Wells, a compact man with sharp eyes and a worn leather bag. "My lord," Wells said, stepping inside without ceremony. His gaze swept the room. "This is the patient?" "Yes," Edward said. "Clara. She has been like this for 2 days, perhaps more. The child reports fever, weakness, little food." Wells set his bag down by the bed. "And you are the daughter?" he asked Amelia. She nodded, clutching her doll. "I shall not bite," he said briskly. "You have done well to seek help. May I ask you to fetch me a cup of water? It will keep you busy while I examine your mother." Amelia looked at Edward. "Go on," Edward said. "I will stay right here." She slipped off the bed and went to the bucket. Wells checked Clara's pulse, lifted her eyelids one by one, listened to her breathing. He spoke in low tones as he worked, more to himself than to anyone else. "Fever, dehydration, weak from lack of nourishment. But she is young and strong at the core. That works in her favor. Has she had any injuries, any known illness?" "None that I can see," Edward said. "Only exhaustion, perhaps, and fear." Wells glanced up at that. "Fear leaves its own mark," he said. "But we shall concern ourselves first with what can be treated. She needs fluids, broths, fresh air, and a clean bed. This place—" He looked around, lips thinning. "I have seen worse, but it is not where she should remain." Amelia brought the water. Wells thanked her, then trickled a bit between Clara's lips with careful patience. Some of it went down. Clara swallowed reflexively, a faint movement of her throat. "Good," Wells murmured. "Very good." "Can we move her?" Edward asked. Wells hesitated. "Not far, and not roughly. But if you can provide a better lodging, sheltered, with someone to watch her, it would be wise. She will need care for several days, weeks, perhaps. She must be kept from drafts, but given air, and food introduced slowly." "I can arrange that," Edward said. Mercer shifted. "My lord, to where?" "To Mrs. Green's cottage," Edward said at once. The decision felt natural, already formed in his mind. She is capable and discreet. She will not gossip. Wells gave him a long look. "This will not be a small undertaking, my lord." "I am aware," Edward said. "Can she be moved by carriage if we support her?" "Yes, so long as she is kept warm and her head steady," Wells said. "I would not delay. The sooner she is in a better environment, the more likely she is to recover." Amelia watched their faces, her own tense. "Are you taking Mama away?" she asked in a thin voice. "We are taking both of you," Edward said at once. "Together, to a cleaner, safer place, where Dr. Wells can see her again. Do you understand?" "You will not leave me here," she whispered. "I give you my word," he said. She studied him with solemn eyes, then nodded slowly. Within the hour, a small covered cart had been brought to the mouth of the alley, the kind usually used for carrying goods. Edward had insisted it be lined with blankets. Between him, Mercer, and Dr. Wells, they lifted Clara as gently as they could, wrapping her in the bedding from her own narrow bed so that the scent would be familiar to her. She made a soft sound, but did not wake. Amelia climbed in beside her mother and sat very straight, one hand on Clara's arm, as if to keep her from sliding away. Edward took a seat opposite them, bracing his boots against the floorboards as the cart jolted into motion. "Is this your carriage?" Amelia asked. "No," he said. "My carriage waits nearer the square. This suits better for now. It rides more steadily over these streets." "Will Mamma wake soon?" she asked. "I hope so," he said. "With Dr. Wells's help, she has a good chance." "You speak like him," she said, half accusing, half thoughtful. "I have listened to him often," Edward said. "He tends to my tenants when they are ill. I trust him." "That is good," she said, and fell silent, watching her mother's face with fierce concentration. The journey to Mrs. Green's cottage did not take long. The house stood at the edge of town, with a small patch of yard and a sturdy door. Smoke curled from the chimney. When the cart stopped, Mrs. Green herself appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a woman past middle age, with capable hands and keen eyes. "My lord," she said, surprised, "I had your message, but I did not expect—" "Oh." Her gaze fell on Clara. Her expression softened. "Bring her in, quickly now." They carried Clara into the front room and laid her on the bed that Mrs. Green had prepared. Clean sheets, a folded quilt, a pillow fluffed high. The room smelled faintly of soap and herbs. "Dear heaven," Mrs. Green murmured, adjusting the pillow under Clara's head. "She is but a girl." "Mrs. Green, this is Amelia," Edward said. "Her daughter." Mrs. Green looked down at the little girl. "Hello, my dear," she said warmly. "You must be tired out." "I am not tired," Amelia said, though her eyes were heavy. "I must stay with Mama." "And so you shall," Mrs. Green said. "But you may sit by her from this nice chair instead of standing on your feet like a soldier, She brought a straight-backed chair to the side of the bed. Amelia climbed up and perched there, leaning forward, her hand never leaving Clara's. Wells gave his instructions: cool cloths, frequent sips of broth and water, careful watching for any change in breathing or color. He and Edward stepped into the small kitchen for a moment's privacy. "She will either rally in the next day or two or sink further," Wells said. "There is no gentle way to put it, but she is in the best place she can be. I will return tomorrow." "I thank you," Edward said. "Send your account to me." Wells gave him a wry look. "I was not concerned on that point, my lord, only on hers." He picked up his bag. "Rest yourself if you can. You look as though you have not much appetite for fares any longer." "No," Edward said. "I find they have lost their charm." When Wells had gone, Mrs. Green returned to the front room, drying her hands. "She will need watching night and day," she said. "I can do so, my lord, but it may be a strain, though I suppose I have managed worse." "I will send a girl from the estate to help with errands," Edward said, "and food. You are not to go short on my account." "On her account, you mean," Mrs. Green said with a little smile. "I am not blind. You have taken a particular interest, my lord." He looked at Clara's still face. "I found a child in a marketplace asking strangers to save her sleeping mother. How could I do otherwise?" Mrs. Green's gaze softened. "You could have looked away, like most would," she said. "But you did not. There is a difference." Amelia listened without speaking, her eyes fixed on her mother. "Will we stay here long?" she asked suddenly. "As long as your mother needs," Edward said. "Mrs. Green is kind. She will care for you both." "Do you live here too?" Amelia asked Mrs. Green. "Yes," Mrs. Green said. "It is my cottage. You may call me Mrs. Green. I make a very good stew when I have the meat for it, and bread. There will be no more going hungry, do you hear?" Amelia blinked, as if the idea was strange. "No more going hungry," she repeated softly. "Good," Mrs. Green said briskly. "Now, my lord, you must leave us to settle. You may return tomorrow if you wish, but it will do no good to hover today. The child needs calm." Edward hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. Amelia, I must go for now, but I will return." Amelia's fingers tightened on Clara's arm. "You promise?" she whispered. "I promise," he said. He left the cottage with reluctance, casting one last look at Clara on the bed and the small figure of her daughter keeping vigil. As he walked back to his carriage, Mercer fell into step beside him. "My lord," Mercer ventured, "this woman, these people, are you intent on continuing this involvement?" Edward glanced at him. "Do you question my decision?" "No, my lord," Mercer said quickly. "Only, it is unusual. People will talk." "Let them," Edward said. "We have done nothing wrong. A woman is ill, a child was hungry, that is all." Mercer did not argue, but his expression said that he knew it was not that simple. The next morning, Edward returned to Mrs. Green's cottage before breakfast. The sky was pale, the air cool. He knocked lightly. Mrs. Green opened almost at once, her hair hastily pinned, an apron over her dress. "You are early, my lord," she said. "Come in." "How is she?" he asked. "Improved," Mrs. Green said. "A little. The fever has not broken, but it has not worsened. She took broth in the night more than before. The child stayed awake until she could no longer keep her eyes open. She is asleep now, on the pallet by the fire." Edward stepped into the front room. Clara lay as he had left her, but her breathing seemed a touch easier. Her cheeks held a faint hint of color now. Beside the hearth, Amelia lay curled under a blanket, her doll clutched to her chest, her hair spread around her. He felt something in himself ease. Mrs. Green watched his face. "You care for them," she said quietly. It was not a question. "I barely know them," he said. "But I cannot forget how I found the child in that square. And—" his gaze drifted to Clara. "There is more to this than a simple illness, Mrs. Green. She fears someone. Them, she called it. I do not yet know who." Mrs. Green nodded slowly. "Fear leaves a mark, my lord. We will see what she says when she is clearer in her head." Over the next 2 days, Clara hovered between sleeping and waking. When she woke, it was only for a few minutes at a time. She drank what they offered her, swallowed bits of softened bread, murmured Amelia's name. Once, in the grey half-light before dawn, she opened her eyes to find Edward sitting in the chair by her bed. "You again," she whispered, her voice rasping. "Yes," he said. "You should not be here," she murmured. "This is not where men like you belong." "Men like me belong wherever they choose to be," he answered. "For now, I choose to be here." She tried to smile. It came out weak. "You do not know what people will say." "They already say many things," he said. "One more will not kill me." Her lashes dipped. "You do not know me," she said. "Then tell me who you are," he said quietly. But her strength failed. Her eyes slid shut again. Her hand, resting on the sheet, curled slightly, as if grasping at something unseen. On the 3rd day, Wells announced with cautious satisfaction that the fever seemed to be breaking. "She is stronger," he said. "Her pulse is steadier. She should be out of danger if she rests and eats. The rest is a matter of time." Clara slept deeply that night, without murmurs or tossing. In the morning she woke to find Amelia asleep with her head on the bed, her small hand wound in the blanket. Clara lifted her own hand and smoothed her daughter's hair. The movement felt difficult but possible. Amelia stirred, blinked, and then sat up straight with a gasp. "Mamma!" "Yes, my heart," Clara said, her voice soft but clearer. "I am here." Amelia burst into tears and climbed gently onto the bed, careful not to jostle her too much. "You would not wake," she sobbed. "I went to the fair. I found a man. He brought you here. We have bread, Mamma, and soup, and a fire." Clara held her as tightly as she could. "You went to the fair alone?" she whispered. "Yes," Amelia said. "You told me not to, but I did." "I am sorry. I was afraid." Clara closed her eyes briefly. "You did what you thought you must," she said. "And you found help. You were very brave." When Mrs. Green appeared with a bowl of broth, Clara tried to sit up further. "Easy now," Mrs. Green said, propping her with pillows. "You are still weak." "You are Mrs. Green," Clara said, remembering the name from Amelia's chatter. "You have been very good to us." "Think nothing of it," Mrs. Green said. "I had an empty bed and 2 extra plates. It seemed wrong not to use them." Later that day, Edward came. Clara saw him clearly for the first time. Tall, well-dressed, his dark hair neat, his expression composed but with something uncertain in his eyes as he crossed the threshold. She felt a flush rise to her cheeks. She was suddenly aware of her tangled hair, the paleness of her skin, the thinness of her hands. She pulled the blanket up a little higher. "Lord Harrington," Mrs. Green said, "she is stronger today." "Yes, I can see that," he said. Clara's gaze snapped to him. "Lord Harrington," she repeated. Edward inclined his head. "Edward Harrington, at your service," he said, "but I believe you have already met me as simply Edward." "You did not tell me," she said, her voice tight. "You were not in a state to care about titles," he answered, "and it seemed unimportant at the time." Unimportant. The word rang strangely in her mind. "Why?" she asked. "Why did I not tell you?" he said. "No," she said. "Why did you help us? My daughter said you brought the physician, that you moved us here, that you come every day. Why?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because she asked me," he said simply, nodding toward Amelia. "Because I found her alone in a crowd, and she told me her mother would not wake. Because once I saw you lying there, I could not walk away and pretend I had not." Clara swallowed. "Gentlemen do not usually involve themselves with women like me," she said. "Women like you?" he repeated. "What sort of women are those?" She looked down at her hands. "The sort who live in alleys and have no husband to speak for them. The sort who have no family at their backs. The sort people talk about in low voices." Mrs. Green made a faint noise of protest, but Edward spoke first. "I have heard plenty of low voices in my life," he said. "Most of them do not deserve the attention they demand." "You do not know my story," Clara said. "You might think differently if you did." "Then tell it to me when you are stronger," he said. "Until then, know this. No story, however sad, will make me regret picking up a child in need." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them. The days that followed were filled with small steps. Clara ate more, sat up longer. Amelia played on the floor with a set of wooden buttons Mrs. Green had found, arranging them in circles and lines. Edward visited most afternoons, sometimes bringing a book, sometimes a basket of food from his cook, sometimes simply himself. He and Clara spoke in fragments at first. The weather, the town, the way Amelia had decided Mrs. Green's old cat was her new friend. But every now and then, something in her manner revealed a different life. The way she thanked him with precise courtesy, the way she spoke of London not as a distant marvel, but as a place she had known, the way her fingers traced the edge of a teacup with unconscious grace. Mrs. Green noticed, so did someone else. Her name was Mrs. Packham. She lived 2 cottages down, with a husband who worked as a porter and a tongue that never tired. She had seen Edward's carriage more than once. She had seen Dr. Wells come and go, and she had ears, which she put to frequent use at the market and at the pump. One afternoon, as Edward arrived, she happened to be standing near Mrs. Green's gate. "Good day to you, my lord," she said, bobbing a curtsy that was almost a bow. "We don't often see such fine visitors in our little corner." "Good day," Edward said politely. "That poor creature you have in there," Mrs. Packham went on, nodding toward the cottage. "Fallen on hard times, I hear. Such a pity. One never knows with some women, does one? Where they came from, what they've done. But they do have a knack for attracting attention from those above them." Her eyes, bright with curiosity, flicked toward his face. "I am merely assisting someone in need," Edward said coolly. "Oh, of course," Mrs. Packham said, looking unconvinced. "You are a charitable gentleman. Everyone will say so. We all know what that usually means." She gave a little laugh that did not reach her eyes. "Still, I hope Mrs. Green knows what she is about, taking in strangers. One must be careful of one's reputation." "I have never yet known Mrs. Green to fail to mind her own business," Edward said. "Perhaps you will allow her to continue to do so." Colour rose in Mrs. Packham's cheeks. "I meant no offence," she said quickly. "We all wish only for peace in the neighbourhood." "I am sure you do," he said, and walked past her into the cottage. Inside, Mrs. Green was smoothing the coverlet on Clara's bed. "Pay her no mind, my lord," she said, when he mentioned the encounter. "She lives on talk. If she doesn't have it, she starves." "But talk can do harm," Clara said quietly. She had heard enough through the thin door. Mrs. Green made a dismissive gesture. "Let the woman find someone else to chew on," she said. Clara's eyes were troubled. That evening, after Edward left, Mrs. Packham came to call. She carried a basket of bread as a peace offering, though the bread was not fresh. She stayed only a few minutes, asking many questions and listening closely to every answer. "Where is your husband, my dear?" she asked Clara with false sweetness. "Does he know you are here with such fine visitors?" "I have no husband," Clara said calmly. "Oh," Mrs. Packham said, her brows lifting. "How unfortunate. And your family? They must worry about you, poor lamb, in such straits." "I am of no use to them," Clara said. "They have made that clear." "How sad," Mrs. Packham said, her mouth puckering in a sympathetic shape that did not touch her eyes. "Well, it is a blessing you have found and friends, though one wonders what they will think when the novelty wears off." When she had gone, Mrs. Green muttered something about shrews in aprons under her breath. Clara said nothing, but her shoulders were tight. The next day, Mrs. Packham lingered again by the gate when Edward arrived. She smiled too broadly, greeted him too eagerly. Her questions grew sharper, though she couched them in talk of concern. "She tells such a strange tale, that one," Mrs. Packham said. "No family, no husband, a child out of wedlock. You must be careful, my lord. People might say you are being taken in." "People may say what they like," he replied, his patience thinning. "It does not change what is right." He found Clara paler than usual, propped against the pillows. Amelia curled at her side. "Are you unwell?" he asked. She shook her head faintly. "I am only tired." she said. Mrs. Packham was here again. His jaw tightened. What did she say? That I was ungrateful, Clara said. That I would bring trouble to Mrs. Green. That gentlemen do not go on visiting cottages forever. That once I am well, I should move along and not draw more eyes to this place. And what did you tell her? He asked. Nothing, Clara said. I have learned that anything I say can be twisted. It is easier to say nothing. He sat down in the chair by her bed. You do not need to concern yourself with Mrs. Packham, he said. She has no power over you. Clara looked at him, her eyes bright with something like despair. You say that, she murmured. But I know better. I have seen what talk can do. You are a count, my lord. You can shrug off unkind words. Mrs. Green cannot. My child cannot. I cannot. He opened his mouth to answer, but she went on, her voice gaining urgency. I am grateful beyond words for what you have done, she said. For Amelia's sake especially. But I cannot stay here and watch your kindness turn to burden. It is only a matter of time before more questions are asked, before someone remembers a name, a face, a story. I cannot let that happen. He frowned. Clara, you are not yet strong enough to be speaking of leaving. I am stronger each day, she said. Soon I will be able to walk farther. I have done it before. I can do it again. I can find work somewhere no one knows me. I have no right to bring scandal to your door. You speak as if my reputation were made of glass, he said. It is not. And even if it were, I would not have it protected at the cost of your safety. You do not understand, she whispered. You cannot. You have never had your name dragged through parlors and corridors. You have never stood in a room and felt every eye on you, hearing words that are not true and knowing you cannot stop them. I have. I will not live that way again. He leaned forward. You are not alone now, he said. You have me. You have Mrs. Green. You have Amelia. We are not helpless. She shook her head, tears gathering fast. You do not owe us anything, my lord. You have already done more than anyone ever has. That is why I must leave, before you regret it, before people say that you— She stopped, unable to finish. That I what? He asked quietly. That you have compromised yourself for the sake of a woman like me? She said in a rush, then covered her face with her hands. I cannot bear it. I will not be the cause of your disgrace as well as my own. He stared at her, anger and something deeper burning in his chest, not at her, but at the world that had taught her to speak this way. Listen to me, he said. You will not go anywhere. Not while you are weak. Not while you are afraid. I will not allow it. Her hands fell away. She looked at him in shocked silence. At that moment, they both heard the faint creak of the front gate and the soft scrape of a shoe in the entry. Mrs. Packham's voice floated from the other room, high and sharp as a kettle. I brought a little broth, she announced. Is our patient receiving visitors? Clara's head turned toward the sound, panic flaring in her eyes. I cannot stay here, she whispered. I will leave as soon as I can stand, so that you and Mrs. Green will not be further burdened by my presence. I cannot allow you to disappear again, Edward said, his voice low and fierce, completely unaware that Mrs. Packham had heard every word from the doorway. Mrs. Packham stood in the doorway, her hand still on the latch, her eyes bright with curiosity and something sharper. Oh, she said in a tone of exaggerated surprise, I did not realize you had company, Mrs. Green, nor that it was such determined company. Mrs. Green stepped forward at once. Mrs. Packham, she said, her voice cool, we were just speaking quietly. Your broth is appreciated, I'm sure, but there was no need to strain your ears. Mrs. Packham smiled, unbothered. I assure you my hearing is in fine condition, she said, as is my concern for my neighbours. One cannot help overhearing when doors are thin. Lord Harrington, you are most attentive to this young lady. One might almost think she belonged to you the way you speak. Edward rose slowly. Mrs. Packham, he said, I must ask you, as a courtesy to Mrs. Green and to Miss Clara, to keep your observations to yourself. Miss? Mrs. Packham repeated, seizing on the word. Oh, indeed. I see. No husband, but a gentleman calling daily. How very modern. Clara flinched. Amelia, sensing tension without understanding, pressed close to her mother's side. Mrs. Packham, Mrs. Green said sharply, you have delivered your broth. You may go now. Mrs. Packham lifted her chin. I meant only kindness, she said. But if no one wishes to hear my advice, I will take it elsewhere. Others may be more grateful. Her gaze slid over Clara in a quick, assessing sweep. The world is small, my dear, she added. Faces are remembered. It would not surprise me if someone recognized you soon, especially with such an illustrious patron by your bed. Then she stepped out and closed the door, though not quite gently. Silence fell for a moment. Clara's hands twisted in the blanket. You see, she whispered. She will talk, they always talk. They? Edward asked. People, Clara said. Women like her. Men in clubs, servants in corridors. They talk, and soon no one asks whether it is true. They simply believe. I cannot have that happen again. Again, he repeated. Clara, who are they? Who are you so afraid of? She shut her eyes. Amelia watched her, anxious. Mamma, the child whispered. Clara drew a breath, and then another, like someone preparing to plunge into cold water. When she opened her eyes, they were clear, though shining with unshed tears. You wish to know, she said quietly. Very well. You have earned the truth, at least. Only if you are ready to tell it, he said. She gave a faint, humorless smile. I do not think I will ever be ready, she said. But waiting has done me no good so far. She looked at Amelia, then at Mrs. Green. May she stay? She asked. I have no secrets from her any longer, only words I have not yet spoken aloud. Mrs. Green nodded and pulled a chair closer, her work-worn hands resting on her apron. Clara shifted slightly against the pillow. My name is Clara, she said. But not only Clara. Once, it was Clara Ellington. The name hung in the air for a moment. Edward stared at her. Ellington, he repeated slowly. As in Lord and Lady Ellington of Surrey? Yes, she said. They are my aunt and uncle. My father was their younger brother. He died when I was very young. They took me in. They raised me. They educated me. They planned my future as carefully as they arranged their dinner parties. Mrs. Green's eyes widened. You were a lady, she said softly. I was a burden with good breeding, Clara answered. That is what I eventually understood. Edward's mind flicked back to the locket he had seen at her throat that first day. Your locket, he said. May I see it? She hesitated, then reached for the chain that lay against her neck. With trembling fingers, she unclasped the locket and placed it in his hand. He opened it. The tiny painted miniature showed a girl of perhaps 16, cheeks rounded, eyes bright, hair arranged with ribbons. A crest was engraved within the lid, a shield with a rearing stag, a small crown curling lines. He knew it. He had seen it on invitations, on carriages, in clubs. Yes, he said quietly. Ellington. Clara watched his face. Now you see, she murmured. I was not born to alleys and shared water buckets. I played the pianoforte in drawing rooms. I danced at assemblies. I was presented. I was prepared. For a husband, Mrs. Green said gently. For the highest bidder, Clara said. Or rather, for the man whose alliance would serve the family best. They chose Mr. Leonard Ashcombe. You may know the name. Edward's jaw tightened. He did know it. Ashcombe was a man of decent fortune and good connections, often seen at tables where cards were played late and stakes ran high. Ashcombe courted me formally, Clara said. He brought flowers, spoke poetry written by other men, bowed over my hand. I was young enough to believe that kindness and attention meant affection. I trusted him, and I trusted my aunt and uncle, who assured me that he was honorable. Her fingers clenched on the blanket. One evening at a small house party, he asked me to walk with him in the garden after supper. My aunt encouraged it. She said it was good for a young lady to be seen with the man she would soon wed. I believed her. She paused. Amelia pressed closer, though she did not fully understand. We walked, Clara continued. He spoke of our future house, of rooms he would have redecorated, of journeys we might take. It all sounded so real. I felt chosen. She took a breath. Then he led me toward the orangery. I thought nothing of it. There were always people about, but that night, by some strange twist, there were not. The servants were elsewhere. The guests remained in the drawing-room longer than usual. We were alone. He kissed me, she said simply. A chaste kiss. Nothing that would have shocked the most delicate sensibility. Had it remained at that, perhaps nothing would have changed. But it did not. He urged me further into the shadows. He spoke very softly, very persuasively. He said we were practically engaged, that a few liberties were allowed that no one would know. She stopped and swallowed. I refused, she said. I stepped back. I told him I would not disobey my uncle's rules. He laughed. And then she shook her head sharply. No, you said no violence. I will honor that. The details do not matter to you. They matter to me. I will only say that when I left that orangery, my gown was in disarray, my hair loose, my cheeks burning. And when we stepped back into the open air, there were eyes. Edward's hands had tightened around the locket, though he forced himself to relax them. Who saw you? He asked. My aunt, Clara said. Another lady. A footman, I think. Enough. My aunt's face went white. My uncle drew me aside before I could even speak. Ashcombe said nothing that night. The next morning, he left early on some fabricated business. My uncle did not ask why. And your aunt and uncle blamed you, Mrs. Green said softly. Of course, Clara said. They said I had wandered into the orangery alone, that I had enticed him, that I had ruined the engagement and, more importantly, their arrangements. Ashcombe sent a letter later, saying he could not marry a girl whose name was already whispered about. My aunt burned it. My uncle said I had brought shame on the family. Her eyes went distant, as if she could still hear the words. They did not listen when I told them what had happened, she said. They said no man of Ashcombe's standing would behave so, and certainly not without encouragement. When, some weeks later, it became clear that there would be a child, they said it was proof of my wickedness. Amelia's eyes grew round. Me? She whispered. Clara looked at her tenderly. Yes, you, she said. You are not proof of wickedness. You are proof that something beautiful can come even out of the worst nights. She turned back to Edward. They offered me choices, she said, all of them terrible. To send the child away at birth, to enter a distant relative's house as a poor relation under another name and live half hidden, to vanish quietly to the country and return later as if nothing had happened. All required me to lie, to pretend my daughter did not exist, or that she was someone else's problem. And you refused, he said. Yes, she answered simply. I could not imagine giving up my child to be raised without love, to be pitied or despised. So I left instead. I took what little money I had. I found a room in town under a different name. I worked where I could, sewing, reading to an older lady with weak eyes, taking in laundry. I have done many things, some more dignified than others, but I kept Amelia with me. She smoothed the child's hair again. We moved often, she went on. When people began to ask questions, when someone recognized my manner or my voice. Once I saw a woman from my aunt's circle in the street. I crossed to the other side and kept walking, but I heard her speak my name to her companion. I knew then we could not stay much longer. Edward's voice was tight. Have the Ellingtons tried to contact you? At first, Clara said. Letters sent through intermediaries, offers wrapped in concern. Each one required the same thing, that I give up Amelia, or at least conceal her. I burned them all. Eventually they stopped, or perhaps they simply could not find where to send them. I do not know. And Amelia's father? He asked quietly. Clara's mouth tightened. Mr. Ashcombe knows of her existence, she said. I told him once when I still believed some scrap of decency might remain in him. He replied that such matters were best left in the dark, that he had responsibilities to his future legitimate family. He sent me £50 and suggested I show gratitude by staying silent. Her eyes flashed. I returned the money, she said. Edward exhaled slowly. He is not related to me, he said, more for the universe than anyone else. Nor to my family. We have shared rooms, that is all. I never knew. Of course you did not, Clara said softly. You have your own world to manage. I have mine. And now those worlds have met, Mrs. Green murmured. Yes, Clara said. By chance, or fate, or Amelia's courage. Amelia puffed her chest a little at that. So you see, Clara finished, if the Ellingtons learn where I am, they will come. They will not drag me home by the hair. They have more subtle methods. They will talk of doing what is best for Amelia. They will speak of providing for her education, her comfort. They will say that I am selfish to cling to her when I cannot give her what they can. And they will use every whisper, every look, every scrap of my past to paint me as unfit. She lifted her chin. I will not let them take her, she said quietly. But I do not know if I can stop them. That is why I run. That is why I hide. Because if they find us, they will have money, influence, friends. More than I have. You have me, Edward said. Clara looked at him, a flicker of hope and disbelief passing over her face. You say that now, she murmured. But when your family hears, when your friends hear, when people you respect begin to question, will you still say it? Yes, he said without hesitation. Silence fell again, thick and tense. Do the Ellingtons know you are in Bath? He asked. I do not think so, she said. I have taken care to avoid their haunts, but news travels. Mrs. Packham is not the only one with ears. He turned the locket over in his hand. May I keep this for a few days? He asked. I wish to confirm something. She hesitated, then nodded. I have worn it long enough, she said. Perhaps it is time it brought something other than memories. That evening, back at his own house, Edward sat in his study with a book of heraldry open on his desk. He traced the Ellington crest with his finger, then looked at the locket again. No mistake. He remembered Lord Ellington, polished, severe, proud of his lineage. He remembered Lady Ellington's cool smile at dinners. He tried to imagine them with a young girl in their care, the girl from the miniature, laughter in her eyes. It was not an easy picture to form. He also remembered passing mention, some years back, of a family incident, something about a niece who had gone astray. The remarks had been vague, accompanied by lifted eyebrows and lowered voices. He had paid them no attention then. He felt ashamed of that now. The next day, he went to Mrs. Green's cottage as usual. As he approached, he saw a strange man standing at the gate, speaking with Mrs. Packham. The man was well dressed, his coat of good cloth, his boots polished. His posture was easy, his smile quick and practiced. When he saw Edward, he straightened and removed his hat. Lord Harrington, I believe, he said. What a fortunate coincidence. I was just inquiring about you. Edward's instinctive wariness sharpened. You have the advantage of me, he said. My name is James Harrow, the man said. Distant cousin to the Ellington family. He watched Edward carefully for a reaction. I understand you have recently extended your generosity to a lady under their concern. Mrs. Packham's eyes shone. She was almost vibrating with satisfaction. I extend my generosity where I see fit, Edward said coolly. To whom are you referring? To Miss Clara Ellington, Harrow said smoothly, or whatever name she currently uses. The family has been most distressed about her absence. When word reached us that a woman of her description was receiving the attention of a nobleman here in Bath, we thought it best to investigate. For her sake, of course. For her sake, Edward repeated. But of course, Harrow said. Though for the sake of the family name as well, you understand. I'm certain you would wish the same if a relative of yours were wandering. Mrs. Packham gave a little laugh. I told you he was respectable, she said to Harrow. Always coming and going, sending doctors, bringing food. Quite the guardian angel. Harrow's eyes flicked toward her. Yes, he said. So I see. He turned back to Edward. Might we speak with the lady? He asked. My instructions are to offer her certain arrangements. Discreetly, of course, out of respect for your position. If Miss Clara wishes to see you, she may, Edward said. But I will not force her to receive anyone. Very civilized, Harrow said pleasantly. Shall we ask her? Inside, Clara was seated in a chair by the window, wrapped in a shawl Mrs. Green had loaned her. Amelia played on the floor with a length of string, making patterns. When Edward entered with Harrow, both women looked up. Clara went very still. Colour drained from her face. Clara, Edward said gently, this is Mr. Harrow. He claims to be related to Lord Ellington. Clara, Harrow said, stepping forward with a genial smile. My dear cousin, how good it is to see you alive and relatively well. Her fingers tightened on the arms of the chair. James, she said, in a voice that was barely more than a breath. So, you do remember me, he said lightly. We met only a handful of times at your aunt's house. I doubt I made much impression, but your situation has given me cause to recall you more clearly. What do you want? She asked. He put a hand to his chest in mock offence. To help, of course, he said. Your aunt and uncle are terribly worried about you. Naturally, they could not approve of the manner in which you left, but they are not without compassion. They wish to see you provided for, and the child as well." Amelia looked up at that, frowning. Clara's voice sharpened. "They wish to see me out of sight," she said, "and Amelia away from me." Harrow's smile did not falter. "They are willing to support your daughter," he said, "to give her a home and education, all the advantages you cannot. They are prepared to overlook certain circumstances in order to ensure she grows up respectable. That is not a small offer." "And in return?" Clara asked. He shrugged delicately. "You would agree to live quietly," he said, "away from town. Under another name, perhaps, with a modest allowance. It need not be unpleasant. You would have your comforts, and you would have the satisfaction of knowing your child is raised properly." "Without her mother," Clara said. "Well," Harrow said, "one must weigh sentiment against practicality. You know as well as I do what the world can be like for a girl born as your daughter was. The Ellington name would shield her. Your company would not." Amelia's eyes flew to Clara's face. "Mama?" she whispered. Clara reached for her hand, blindly. "Do not be afraid," she said, though her own voice shook. Edward stepped forward. "And if she refuses?" he asked Harrow. Harrow turned to him with a look of polite regret. "We hope it will not come to that," he said. "It is always better when such matters are settled within the family. But if she insists on clinging to a path that endangers the child's future, the family may feel compelled to consult their solicitor. There are laws, you know, standards. The welfare of the child may trump the wishes of a disturbed mother." Clara's breath hitched. "I am not disturbed," she said. "No, no," Harrow said quickly. "Poor choice of words, forgive me. I simply mean you have been through much. One cannot expect you to judge clearly. That is why families exist, to decide what is best." He glanced at Edward. "I am sure Lord Harrington understands this, duty and all that." Edward's hands curled at his sides. "My understanding," he said evenly, "is that a child belongs with the mother who has fed her, clothed her, and risked her life to keep her safe, not with relatives who cast that mother aside when she needed them most." Harrow's eyes cooled. "You speak with conviction, my lord," he said, "yet you have known her only weeks. The Ellingtons have known her all her life." "They knew the part of her that bowed and smiled at their table," Edward said. "They did not know the woman who walked into a fair alone, hungry, and still thought first of her child." "Perhaps," Harrow said. "Perhaps not. In any case, this is not for you to decide." "Unless—" he let the word hang. "Unless what?" Edward asked. "Unless your involvement is deeper than charity," Harrow said. "Rumour travels fast, Lord Harrington. People are saying you are much in this lady's company, that you have taken her under your wing. Some might even say you are attached." Clara's cheeks flushed. Amelia looked bewildered. "My regard for Miss Clara's welfare is not rumour," Edward said. "It is fact." "Indeed," Harrow said. "Well, that complicates matters. The family will not wish to be seen to oppose a man of your standing. They may need to take more formal steps to ensure everyone's interests are protected." He picked up his hat. "I have said what I came to say," he added. "The family's solicitor will arrive in Bath within a few days. He will no doubt wish to speak with you, Miss Ellington, and with you, Lord Harrington. I trust for the child's sake that we may come to a reasonable understanding." He bowed politely to Clara, nodded to Edward, smiled briefly at Amelia in a way that made her shrink back and left. The door closed behind him. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Amelia whispered, "Mamma, are they going to take me away?" Clara pulled her close, her hands shaking. "No," she said. "No, my love. I will not let them. I will never let them." Her eyes lifted to Edward's. The fear in them was raw, stripped of all pride. "They can do this," she said hoarsely. "If they bring the Lord, if they say I am unfit. They have money, friends. They can make anything sound respectable. I have nothing." "You have me," Edward said again, more fiercely than before. She searched his face. "You say that as if it could change everything," she whispered. He looked at her, at Amelia, at Mrs. Green standing in the corner with her lips pressed tight, and he felt the weight of the choice before him like a physical thing. For the first time, he understood that this was no longer a quiet act of charity, but a battle for Clara's dignity, and Amelia's future, and he would have to decide how far he was willing to go to protect them. Edward did not answer at once. He stood there, looking from Clara to Amelia, and felt the weight of the words he had just spoken settle over him. "You have me." They were not words one tossed away later as a misunderstanding. Mrs. Green broke the silence first. "Come and sit down, my lord," she said quietly. "No one decides anything worth deciding while standing up like a soldier at inspection." He gave a huff that was almost a laugh and took his usual chair by the bed. Amelia climbed into Clara's lap and clung to her. "What will they do?" Clara asked. Truly, not in polite phrases, but in plain words. Edward kept his voice calm. "They may petition the court to grant them guardianship of Amelia," he said. "They will speak of your lack of means, of the circumstances under which she was born, of your disappearance from their care. They will imply instability. They will call me mad without using the word," Clara said softly. "Yes," he said. "And the court?" she asked. He hesitated. "Courts are made of men who dine with men like Lord Ellington," he said. "Connections matter, but so does the impression you make now. So do witnesses. So does the presence of someone willing to stand beside you. Someone respectable," she said. "Someone like you." "Yes," he said again. She looked down at Amelia's dark head. "If I fight," she murmured, "they may win anyway. And if I lose, it will be worse. They will say, 'We tried to be kind. We offered her comfort, and she threw it away. She is ungrateful. She is selfish.' They will make me a monster in Amelia's eyes." "Never," Amelia said fiercely, muffled against her dress. Clara stroked her hair. "You do not know how stories grow, my heart," she whispered. Edward leaned forward. "Clara," he said, "what do you want? If there were no Ellingtons, no gossip, no law that could be bent, what would you choose?" She looked startled, as if no one had ever asked her that. "I would choose to live quietly with my daughter," she said slowly, "to earn enough that she never goes hungry, to see her laugh without fear, to walk out of my door and not be watching every face for recognition." "And would you wish to do that alone?" he asked. She gave a small, helpless laugh. "I cannot imagine another way," she said. "There has never been anyone else. You have me," he said again. Her fingers tightened on Amelia's shoulder. "You must stop saying that," she whispered. "You do not know what you are offering." "I know very well," he said. Mrs. Green rose. "I will see to the kettle," she said briskly. "The air in here is growing too thick for my liking." She left them, though they could hear her moving in the next room, banging pots a little louder than necessary. "Mr. Harrow spoke of the solicitor," Clara said. "When will he come?" "In a few days," Edward said. "They will want time to send letters, prepare documents, gather whatever gossip they can. They will arrive convinced they are doing the right thing." "And you?" she asked. "What will you do?" "I will speak with him," Edward said. "I will make it clear that any attempt to tear you from your child will not go unchallenged." "By whom?" she asked. "You? Your friends? Your family?" "By me," he said. "My friends and family may add their voices or not as they please, but my position is my own." She watched him with a strange, wary tenderness. "You speak as if your position were a sword," she said softly. "Do you wish to spend it on us?" "Yes," he said. She shook her head. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Perhaps both," he said. "The distinction has always escaped me." She laughed then, a small, tired sound, but real. It loosened something inside him. The next days passed in a kind of taut calm. Clara grew stronger. She could walk from the bed to the chair by the window without support now, though she moved slowly. Amelia spent hours outside in Mrs. Green's patch of yard, under strict instructions never to go beyond the gate without permission. Mrs. Packham for once kept her distance. The presence of Harrow and the mention of solicitors had impressed even her, though it had not stopped her from whispering in corners of the market. Edward spent his mornings attending to estate matters, and his afternoons at the cottage. In the evenings he sat in his study, writing letters and staring at candles that burned low before he noticed the time. One evening, Mercer knocked and entered without waiting for more than a breath. "My lord," he said, "if I may speak freely?" "You always do," Edward said. "Sit down, Mercer." Mercer remained standing. "This business with Miss Clara," he began. I have known you since you were a boy. I have never seen you so intent on anything. Is that a reproach? Edward asked mildly. No, my lord, Mercer said. Merely an observation. There will be talk. There already is. Some of your acquaintances have made inquiries. Very polite, very curious. They wonder what holds you so tightly to a cottage on the edge of town. And what did you tell them? Edward asked. That you were engaged in a matter of conscience, Mercer said. Which is true enough. Edward smiled faintly. You disapprove, he said. I am a servant, Mercer said. It is not my place to approve or disapprove, but I care what becomes of this house and of you. If you choose a path that will bring you trouble, I would rather you did so with clear eyes. My eyes have never been clearer, Edward said quietly. Mercer studied him. Forgive the question, he said. Do you intend to marry her? The word hung there between them. Edward answered it before he could second-guess himself. Yes, he said, if she will have me. Mercer's shoulders eased as if some private scale had tipped. Then the rest may be weathered, he said. A count who is constant is harder to pull down than one who wavers. You surprise me, Edward said. I have seen the way she looks at her child, Mercer said simply, and the way you look at them both. If a marriage can be built on that, it is stronger than some I have seen built on nothing but land and rank. Edward's throat felt tight. Thank you, he said quietly. The solicitor arrived 3 days later. His name was Mr. Briggs. He was a neat man with careful hair and cautious eyes, carrying a leather case that seemed almost as stiff as he was. Harrow came with him, of course, his smile as smooth as ever. They requested a meeting in a neutral place. Edward offered his own drawing room. If they wished neutral ground, they could do no better than the house of the man whose support they hoped to secure. Clara arrived accompanied by Mrs. Green and Amelia. She wore the best dress she owned, mended carefully, and Mrs. Green's shawl. Her hair was smoothed and tied back. She looked pale but composed. As she stepped into the room, Edward's gaze found her at once. He crossed the space between them in a few strides. Are you certain you are strong enough for this? He asked under his breath. I have been running from them for years, she said. I am tired of running. If I am to fall, I would rather do it standing up. He wanted to take her hand. He did not yet. Harrow rose as she approached. Cousin, he said, all cordiality, you look much improved. Your benefactors take good care of you. Briggs bowed. Miss Ellington, he said. Lord Harrington, Mrs. Green. Thank you for agreeing to this conversation. Clara lifted her chin. Say what you have come to say, she said. I know you will dress it in fine words. I prefer to see the bones. Briggs blinked, perhaps not accustomed to such directness from women in shawls. Very well, he said. I represent the interests of Lord and Lady Ellington. They are concerned for the welfare of their niece and her child. They wish to avoid unpleasantness, both for you and for the family name. To that end, they propose the following. You, Miss Ellington, would agree to reside in a house provided for you at a distance from town. You would receive a modest allowance, sufficient for your comfort. You would not be expected to return to your aunt and uncle's social circle. In return, you would consent to the child, Amelia, being raised under their guardianship. She would be educated, clothed, and cared for as a member of the family. You would have limited access to her at times and under conditions they deem suitable. Limited access, Clara repeated, meaning when I behave. Briggs cleared his throat. There must be some order, he said. You must see that. And if I do not accept, she asked. Harrow's voice slipped in smoothly. Then, as I mentioned, the family may feel compelled to seek a legal remedy, he said. A petition to the court. They would present evidence of your instability, of your lack of means, of the irregular nature of the child's birth. Judges are practical men, Clara. They will ask whether a mother wandering from place to place without support is truly able to provide what a child needs. Warmth, love, protection, Clara said. Do judges ask about those? Briggs looked mildly uncomfortable. They concern themselves with tangible matters, he said. Placements, incomes, houses, names. And if the man you call a benefactor here, Harrow said, nodding lightly toward Edward, tires of his charity, what then? You will be alone again. The child will suffer. Is it not kinder to accept an offer now, while it is made from within the family, rather than have your daughter taken from you by decree later. Think of her, Clara, not your pride." Clara's hands had gone white on the arms of her chair. Amelia sat beside her, clutching her skirt. "Do not," she whispered fiercely. "Do not use my daughter as a weapon against me and call it kindness." Harrow shrugged. "Words are only words," he said. "The reality remains. You are outmatched. Unless—" Again he let the word dangle. Edward stood. "Enough," he said quietly. Harrow turned to him. "My lord, surely—" "I have heard enough," Edward said. "You speak of kindness, Mr. Harrow, Mr. Briggs, but I hear only convenience. You wish to tidy away a story that troubles your dinners. You speak of Amelia's welfare, yet your first instinct is to separate her from the only person who has ever fought for her." Briggs bristled. "Lord Harrington, with respect—" "With respect," Edward interrupted, "you will listen. You came into my house to discuss the fate of two people who are under my protection. You have spoken. Now you will hear me. Miss Clara Ellington," he went on, turning to look at her, "has done nothing that merits the loss of her child. She was wronged by a man she trusted and abandoned by a family who valued reputation above justice. She has worked, scrimped, gone hungry rather than give up her daughter. If there is instability here, it is not hers. It is yours in bending every rule of decency to preserve your comfort." Harrow's smile had vanished. Briggs looked as if he would rather be anywhere else. "You ask what will happen when I tire of my charity," Edward said. "Allow me to answer plainly. I will not tire of it because it is not charity. It is attachment, it is respect, and it is something else besides." His heart beat hard in his chest. He was aware of every eye on him, Clara's wide and unsure, Amelia's frightened, Mrs. Green's intent. Even Mercer, standing discreetly near the door, seemed hardly to breathe. "I wish to make that explicit," Edward said. "Here, now, before any more threats are made." He turned fully toward Clara. "Clara," he said, and her name felt like a vow in his mouth, "when I first saw Amelia in that square, I meant only to help a child in distress. When I found you, I meant only to keep you alive. But somewhere between that day and this one, my intentions changed. I find my thoughts returning to you and your daughter at all hours. I find my house quiet when you are not in it, and this cottage warmer when you are." She stared at him, breath shallow. "My regard for you is not born of pity," he went on. "I admire your courage, your devotion, your refusal to surrender what matters. I admire the way you have borne undeserved shame without letting it poison your heart. I admire the way you love Amelia more than yourself. I cannot stand by and watch men who never knew you decide the shape of your future. I wish to stand beside you instead. If you will allow it, I ask you to be my wife." The room seemed to hold its breath. Even Harrow blinked. Briggs made a faint choking sound. "My lord," he said, "this is highly irregular. You have known the lady—" "Long enough," Edward said. Clara's lips parted, but no sound came. Her fingers trembled on Amelia's shoulder. Tears gathered in her eyes, but they did not fall. "You do not know what you are asking," she whispered at last. "I think I do," he said. "I ask you to share my house, my name, my life. I ask you to bring Amelia fully into that life. I ask you to let me stand between you and those who would harm you, not as a distant benefactor, but as a husband." "A husband," she repeated faintly. "A count." "Edward," he said quietly. "To you, if you will have me." She shook her head in disbelief. "You do not understand what this will cost you," she said. "Your friends will laugh, your family will be angry. Women you could have married will turn their backs. You will be known forever as the man who tied himself to a ruined woman. Then they will know something true about me," he said. "I would rather be tied to a woman of courage and kindness than praised for marrying someone who merely suits my station." He glanced at Briggs and Harrow. "And if the Ellingtons wish to contest the custody of Amelia after such a marriage, they will find themselves in an awkward position. It is one thing to snatch a child from a poor single mother, quite another to try to take her from the household of a peer who has made her his ward in all but blood." Briggs drew himself up. The law cares very much about appearances," Edward said. "A court may sympathize with a girl born under a stain, but it will hesitate to brand a sitting nobleman's household unfit, especially if that nobleman is willing to spend his fortune and his time defending his family's integrity." He looked at Clara again. "I do not offer you a shield you must stand behind," he said softly. "I offer you a place beside me, but I will not pretend my name has no weight. It does. I choose to spend it here." Clara closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they shone. "I never wanted to marry again," she said. "After Ashcombe, after everything, I swore I would never put myself at a man's mercy. I told myself I would rely only on my own hands. It was easier to think that way, even when it hurt." She looked down at Amelia, who was watching them both, as if the world might end with whichever word her mother chose next. "But my hands are not enough," Clara said quietly. "Not if they mean losing her. Not if they mean running forever. I do not wish to love anyone again, but I already do." She drew a breath, steadying herself. "I love my daughter," she said, "and I love you. I did not wish to. It seemed foolish, dangerous. But it happened. And if I send you away now in the name of pride, I will regret it every day we spend hiding." Her voice shook, but she went on. "If you are certain, if you are very, very certain you will not wake one morning and wish yourself free of this madness, then, yes, I will marry you." Amelia gave a little gasping sound. Mrs. Green covered her mouth with her hand, eyes full. Edward felt something in his chest loosen, as if a band had been cut. "I am certain," he said hoarsely. Harrow stared at them, as if they had both lost their minds. "This is absurd," he said. "Lord Harrington, you cannot seriously propose—" "I already have," Edward said. "Your family will never allow—" "My family," Edward interrupted, "do not run my life. And if they attempt to interfere, they will find themselves very politely ignored." Briggs cleared his throat. "From a legal standpoint," he said slowly, "this alters the landscape. If Miss Ellington becomes your wife, Lord Harrington, and you acknowledge the child in your household, any petition by the Ellington family will be complicated. Judges do not like to seem to intrude upon stable marriages. It would reflect poorly on their judgment if the case became public." Harrow shot him a glare. "Whose side are you on?" he snapped. "The side of practicality," Briggs said. "Lord Ellington engaged me to protect the family's reputation. I must consider which course serves that purpose best. A quiet marriage between Miss Ellington and a sitting nobleman, with the child absorbed into that household, may be less damaging than a public battle that draws attention to old scandal." "You would have them rewarded for defiance?" Harrow demanded. "I would have them gone from your docket," Briggs said, "with as little fuss as possible." He turned to Clara. "If you marry Lord Harrington, Miss Ellington, I will advise my client that further action regarding the child is unwise. I cannot promise they will approve, but they will likely tolerate, out of self-interest if nothing else." "Approve," Clara said with a shaky laugh. "They will never approve. Then let them disapprove in peace," Mrs. Green said briskly. "Far away, while this house gets on with its life." Harrow looked between them, incredulous. "You cannot be serious," he said again. "Clara, think. A count may promise anything now, in a fit of romantic impulse. When the novelty fades—" Edward took a step closer to him. "Mr. Harrow," he said quietly, "you have questioned my judgment enough for one day. You may tell Lord Ellington that if he wishes to continue this discussion, he may write to me directly, or come himself. But he will not take this child from her mother, not while I have breath." Something in his tone finally reached Harrow. The other man's gaze flickered, then dropped a fraction. "Very well," Harrow said stiffly. "I will report what has been said. Do not expect congratulations." "I do not," Edward said. Briggs closed his case with a soft snap. "I will write to Lord Ellington tonight," he said. "My lord, Miss Ellington." He bowed to them both. "Mrs. Green." He inclined his head to her as well, perhaps for the first time seeing her as more than part of the furniture. Harrow and Briggs left together, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Silence filled the drawing-room. Amelia looked up at her mother. "Mamma," she whispered, "does this mean we will not have to run any more?" Clara gathered her close. "If it is within our power, my heart," she said, voice thick, "we will not run again." She lifted her gaze to Edward. "Are you very sure?" she asked one last time. He stepped to her side and in front of everyone took her hand. "Yes," he said simply, "I am." For the first time since he had known her, Clara leaned into him without resistance, as if allowing herself to rest against something solid at last. And the room seemed to exhale with them, carrying them all gently toward the life that waited just beyond this hard-won peace. The days that followed felt strange to Clara, as if someone had taken her life and turned it gently but firmly in another direction. One morning she woke in Mrs. Green's cottage and realized that for the first time in years she was not planning where to run next. Instead, they were planning a wedding. "I have nothing to wear," she said to Mrs. Green, staring at her two plain gowns laid out on the bed. "One is patched, the other is thin. They will laugh." "Let them laugh," Mrs. Green said, "but they will not. You will be Lady Harrington. They will have to learn to swallow their laughter with their tea." Clara almost dropped the brush she was holding. "Do not call me that yet," she whispered. "It does not feel real." "It will," Mrs. Green said. "Soon enough you will grow tired of hearing it." Amelia bounced on the pallet near the hearth. "I like it," she announced. "Lady Harrington. It sounds like a queen in a story. Does that mean I am a princess?" "It means you are a nuisance," Clara said, laughing, and pulled her daughter into an embrace. "But I suppose you will be a very small, very demanding princess." Amelia squealed with delight. "Do princesses have their own rooms?" she asked. "They do in this house," Edward said from the doorway. All three turned. He leaned against the frame, smiling. "How much did you hear?" Clara asked, cheeks warming. "Enough to know that no one here intends to show the proper awe for your future station," he said. "I fear my house will be full of rebels." "Perhaps you should reconsider," she said lightly. "It is not too late." "It is far too late," he said. "I am ruined. Beyond hope." Amelia ran to him. "You promised I would have a room," she said, "with a window and a shelf for books and a place for my doll. And a bed that does not creak," Mrs. Green added. "I did promise," he said. "And I keep my promises. Come, I have something to show you all." He had brought his carriage this time, the Harrington crest discreet on the door. Mrs. Green muttered that she would not go rattling about in fine carriages at her age, but she came all the same. The drive to Harrington House took only a few minutes. Clara had passed it once or twice in earlier weeks, never imagining she might one day live there. Now as the carriage rolled up the drive, she gripped Amelia's hand and tried to steady her breathing. The house was not as grand as some she had known in her girlhood, but it was handsome, solid, and welcoming. The front steps were wide. The door stood open. A line of servants waited, not stiff and cold, but attentive. Mercer stepped forward. "Welcome, Miss Clara," he said, bowing. "Miss Amelia, Mrs. Green, we are prepared." "Prepared for what?" Amelia asked. "For inspection," Mercer said gravely. "You must see if the house is suitable." Amelia's eyes lit up. "We may look at everything," she cried. "Within reason," Edward said. "We shall begin with the most important room." "The kitchen," Mrs. Green said. "The library," Clara said at the same time. "The nursery," Amelia added. Edward laughed. "We must visit them all," he said. "But today we start with Amelia's room." He led them up a broad staircase along a corridor and to a door painted a soft, clean white. He opened it with a small, almost boyish flourish. The room was not large, but it was bright. Sunlight fell through a window onto a simple bed with a quilted coverlet. A small table stood near the window, with a chair just the right size for a child. Shelves lined one wall, some already filled with a few well-chosen books, picture books, simple tales, a book of animals. On the floor near the hearth lay a rug with a pattern of vines and flowers. In one corner stood a doll's cradle, newly carved but plain. Amelia stepped inside, as if afraid someone might shout that she did not belong. "This is mine," she whispered. "If you like it," Edward said. "I like it," she breathed. She ran to the bed and touched the coverlet, then to the shelf, and ran her finger along the spines. "Mama, look, there is a chair, just for me, and a place for my doll." "Mrs. Green, there is a rug that does not scratch my feet." Clara could not speak for a moment. Her throat felt too tight. "She will wear out the floor with her excitement," Mrs. Green said softly, but her eyes were bright. Edward turned to Clara. "Do you approve?" he asked. She nodded. "It is perfect," she said. "It is more than perfect. It is safe." "Safe," he repeated. "Yes, that is what I wanted most." They walked through the rest of the house together. The library was everything Clara had hoped. Shelves reaching high, a ladder to climb them, a large hearth, chairs that invited reading. She touched the spines of books she had once known and others she had never seen. "You may read any of them," Edward said. "This is your house now." "Not yet," she said. "Soon," he replied. He showed her the room that would be hers, next to his. It was elegant but not ostentatious, with a view of the gardens. For a moment she saw herself as others might, a woman brought up in one world, lost in another, now stepping across yet a third threshold. "Are you frightened?" he asked quietly when they were alone. "Yes," she said honestly. "So am I," he said. "I have never married a woman I admired before." She laughed in spite of herself. "How many have you married?" she asked. "None," he said, "which explains my lack of practice." She turned to him, serious again. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Ever? The years you spent alone?" He thought for a moment. "There were times I felt something was missing," he said. "But I told myself it was the way of things. I see now that I was waiting without knowing it. For you. For Amelia. For this." "You speak as if we were a gift," she murmured. "You are," he said simply. A week later, a letter arrived from Lord Ellington. Mercer brought it to Edward in his study, his expression unreadable. "From Ellington," he said. "Delivered by a rider who looked as if he had swallowed a lemon." Edward took the letter and broke the seal. He read it once, then again, then let out a slow breath. "Well?" Clara asked that afternoon, when they met at Mrs. Green's again. She had not wanted to be at Harrington House when the letter came. Old habits of fear were hard to shake. "He does not bless us," Edward said dryly, "but he does not oppose us either." "What does he say?" she asked. "That he has been informed of our intended marriage," Edward said. "That he regrets the unfortunate circumstances that have led to this undesirable publicity. That in order to minimize further talk, he will not contest the arrangement. He asks that we refrain from parading the connection." "Parading," Clara repeated, "as if I would stand on a balcony and shout his name to the street." "He also says," Edward went on, "that any legal claim to Amelia's guardianship is withdrawn. He believes she will be adequately provided for under my roof." Clara sank slowly into a chair. "Withdrawn," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "He has set us free," she murmured, "by trying to keep himself clean." "Self-interest works in our favor at last," Edward said. She laughed then, a sound that had more light in it than any he had heard from her before. "I do not care why he did it," she said. "Only that he has. Amelia will not be taken from me." "No," Edward said. "She will not." They told Amelia together that evening. "Does this mean they will not come to get me?" she asked, small hands twisting the edge of her apron. "It means they have changed their minds," Clara said. "They have decided they do not want to fight us." "Because you are going to marry Edward," Amelia said carefully, "and because he is important." "Partly," Clara said, "but also because they do not wish to have people looking too closely at old stories. They prefer quiet. We will give them that. And we will have our life." "Our life?" Amelia repeated. "All three of us? In the big house?" "Yes," Edward said, surprised by the thick feeling in his chest at her simple speech. "All three of us. And Mrs. Green, if she will allow it." "Oh, I am not living in that palace," Mrs. Green said at once. "I would track mud on every carpet." "We can spare a little mud," Edward said. "I will visit," she conceded. "I am too used to my own walls to change them now. But I will come to scold you when you forget to eat." The wedding day came sooner than Clara expected. She woke to a pale sky and the sound of Amelia humming to herself as she arranged wildflowers in a chipped mug. "For your hair," Amelia said. "Mrs. Green says brides should have flowers." "Brides should also have neat hems," Mrs. Green said, crouched at Clara's feet with a needle. "Stand still, girl. You would think you had never worn a dress before." The gown had been altered from one of Edward's late mother's simpler dresses, found in a trunk. It was cream-coloured, not the bright white of debutantes, but it suited Clara better. Mrs. Green had taken it in, let it out, and muttered over it for 3 nights. "There," she said at last, sitting back. "You look like yourself, which is all that matters." Clara turned toward the small mirror. She saw a woman with clear eyes, a quiet mouth, and a straight spine. Lines of worry had not vanished from her face, but they had softened. "Do you miss them?" Mrs. Green asked gently. "Your aunt and uncle, your old friends?" "No," Clara said. surprising herself with the firmness of it. "I miss the girl I was before I knew what they valued, but I would not be her again even if I could." Mrs. Green nodded slowly. "Good," she said. She would not have known what to do with a child like Amelia. Amelia came up behind her in the mirror, placing a clumsy circlet of flowers on Clara's hair. "Now you look like a proper bride," she declared. "You will not trip, will you?" "I will try not to," Clara said. The ceremony itself was small, held in the chapel on Harrington Land. Edward had invited only a handful of people, a few old friends he trusted to keep their tongues, the vicar and those who already knew the story. Mercer, Mrs. Green, Dr. Wells. Clara's heart pounded as she stepped into the chapel on Mercer's arm. Edward stood at the front waiting, his gaze fixed on her as if no one else existed. "You look terrified," he whispered when she reached him. "I am," she whispered back. "And you?" "I am calmer than I have any right to be," he said, "perhaps because I am exactly where I wish to be." The vicar began. The words were familiar. Clara had heard them as a child from polished pews, while others pledged themselves. They sounded different now, spoken over her head with her hand in Edward's. "Wilt thou have this woman to thy wedded wife?" the vicar asked. "I will," Edward said, voice steady. "Wilt thou have this man to thy wedded husband?" he asked Clara. Her throat felt tight. "I will," she said, and the words rang very clear. When it came time for the vows, Edward did not look away once. His hand around hers was warm and sure. "With this ring I thee wed," he said, sliding the band onto her finger. "So with my body I thee worship, and with all my worldly goods I thee endow." She held his gaze as she answered in turn. "With this ring I thee wed," she said, "and all my life I thee love." It felt like stepping into sunlight after years indoors. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, there was no great shout, no thunder of applause. There was only a breath shared between them, and the sound of Amelia's delighted gasp. "You may kiss the bride," the vicar said, smiling. Edward lifted Clara's hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles first, a gesture of old-fashioned respect. Then he leaned closer, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She did not. Their first kiss as husband and wife was soft and brief, but it sent a warm rush through her, not of fear, but of something like home. Afterward, they walked out into the courtyard with Amelia between them, her small hand in each of theirs. "Are we a family now?" she asked. "Yes," Clara said. "We always were, but now the world knows it." The wedding breakfast was simple but merry. Dr. Wells insisted on giving a speech about stubborn patients and miracles in alleys. Mrs. Green complained that the wine was too fine for her tongue, and then asked for a second glass. Mercer hovered at the back, eyes suspiciously bright. Later, when the guests had gone and the house had quieted, Edward and Clara stood together at the window of their bedchamber. The sky was streaked with evening colours. Somewhere below, Amelia's laughter floated up. She was discovering that the staircase made an excellent place for races. "She has taken to the house," Edward said. "She has taken to the stairs," Clara answered. "The house will have to forgive her." "She will grow up here," he said softly. "Climbing those stairs, getting lost in the library, stealing biscuits from the kitchen. She will have scrapes and lessons and sulks, and we will be the ones she comes to when she is hurt or angry or in love." "In love," Clara repeated, a little dazed. "I cannot imagine her grown." "Nor can I," he said. "I do not wish to. She is small for such a short time." Clara leaned her shoulder against his. "Do you think we will do well?" she asked. "As parents, as us. I think we will make mistakes," he said, "and then we will make amends. I think we will argue about trivial things and agree on what matters. I think we will love each other on days when we like each other less, and on days when we like each other more. That is all anyone can hope." She smiled. "You make it sound almost simple." "It is not simple," he said, "but it is clear." She turned to face him fully. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For seeing us," she said. "For hearing Amelia's voice when others did not. For believing me when others would not. For asking me to stay when all I knew was how to leave." He cupped her face gently. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting a stranger in a square, for telling me the truth when it cost you, for saying yes when it would have been easier to say no." She laughed softly. "It was not easier," she said. It was only possible. They stood there for a while, the house settling around them like a living thing. The air felt different now, not because of the walls or the furniture, but because of the promise that hung between them. That night, Clara lay awake for a little while, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. A door closing, a log shifting in the grate, the faintest creak of the floorboards as someone, probably Amelia, tiptoed to her new room and back. Edward's hand rested lightly over hers. She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing beside her. "Are you awake?" she whispered. "Yes," he murmured. "I am watching you think." "What am I thinking?" she asked. "That this cannot be real," he said. "That someone will knock on the door tomorrow and tell you it has all been a mistake." She swallowed. "Yes," she admitted. "Something like that." "It is real," he said. "No one is coming to take it away. Not Lord Ellington, not Harrow, not Ashcombe, not gossiping neighbours. They may talk, but they cannot unmake this." She felt something inside her slowly unclench, like a fist opening after years. "Do you know what I'm thinking?" he asked. "What?" she whispered. "That this began because a little girl was brave enough to tug at a stranger's sleeve," he said, "and that I must spend the rest of my life worthy of that courage." "You are," she said. "Not yet," he answered. "But I will try. Every day." She turned and rested her head against his shoulder. "Then I will try too," she said. "Every day." In the months that followed, the house filled with new sounds. Amelia's footsteps, fast and light, up and down the stairs, her questions at table, her laughter when she discovered that Mercer could make a coin vanish and reappear behind her ear, her shrieks of delight when Mrs. Green arrived with a basket of scones and stories. Clara's voice joined them, reading aloud in the library, singing softly to herself as she walked through the garden, speaking with Edward over accounts and plans and future harvests. She learned the names of tenants and their children. She wrote letters on paper with the Harrington seal, and did not flinch when she saw it. Sometimes news of the wider world reached them. There were whispers that Lord Ellington had been unusually testy at a recent dinner, that Mrs. Packham, upon hearing of the marriage, had been struck speechless for a full minute before launching into an outrage that no one fully understood, that Mr. Ashcombe had paled visibly when someone mentioned the Harrington name in connection with a certain lady he had once known. Clara listened to these reports with a strange calm. "Let them talk," she would say. "We have better things to do." On a warm afternoon nearly a year after the fair, Edward found Clara and Amelia sitting under a tree near the edge of the grounds. Amelia was weaving clumsy crowns of daisies. Clara was watching her with a smile that still caught him by surprise even now. He sat down beside them. "What are we making?" he asked. "Royal headwear," Amelia said solemnly, placing a lopsided daisy crown on his hair. "You are now the king of not running away." "And what is your mother?" he asked. "She is the queen of staying," Amelia said at once. Clara's eyes glistened, but she laughed. "And what are you?" she asked her daughter. "I am the princess of asking for help," Amelia said proudly. Edward felt his throat tighten. "A powerful title," he said. "Not everyone knows how." "I do," she said. "I did it once. I can do it again if I must, but I hope I do not have to." He looked at Clara. Their hands found each other in the grass, fingers interlacing. "You will never have to do it alone again," he said. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn. The house stood behind them, solid and sure. The future was not perfectly smooth, no life ever was, but it was theirs, freely chosen. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, Amelia's weight warm against her side. Her past had not vanished. The scars remained, the memories with them. But they no longer ruled her. They had been woven into something new. Once, she had stood in an alley and felt the world closing around her. Now she sat in the open air with her family and felt it stretch outward instead, wide and bright and full of paths she could take without fear. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" she asked softly. Edward considered. "If they had been," he said, "I might never have gone to that fair. I might never have heard a little voice in the crowd. I might never have followed it. So no, I do not wish them different. Not if it means losing this." She smiled. "Nor do I," she said. "For all the pain, I would walk through it again, to come out here." He glanced down at Amelia. who was now trying to crown Mrs. Green's old cat with flowers. The cat was enduring it with long-suffering patience. "Then we agree," he said, "on the most important thing." "What is that?" she asked. "That love," he said quietly, "is not what the world says it is. It is not fine rooms or perfect reputations. It is a man and a woman and a child sitting in the grass, knowing that whatever comes next, they will face it together." Clara squeezed his hand. "Together," she echoed. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt not as if she were clinging to the edge of life, but as if she had stepped fully into it, where a little girl's courage, a count's stubborn heart, and a young mother's refusal to let go had turned humiliation into hope, and hope into a love that would not be shaken. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.